Welcome to the final episode of our AcadeCon 2023 Spotlight Series, everyone. In today's episode, I sat down with the head of the RPG Academy and organizer of AcadeCon itself, Michael Ross, to talk about his game, Action 12 Cinema. But before we get to the action of this episode, here's what to expect in our calls to action. And it's just me, because Amelia is a little bit sick, so after the show, join me back here to hear about my thoughts about this game, the tail end of the Star-Crossed Love Letters crowdfunding campaign, normal podcasting closer stuff, and a sneak peek into next month's series. Until then, enjoy the episode, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Character Creation Cast, everyone. In this series, we'll be shining a light on some current or up-and-coming games to keep an eye out for, live from AcadeCon 2023. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan, and today I am here at AcadeCon in a private room, welcoming Michael Ross from the RPG Academy to talk about Action 12 Cinema, a B-movie action RPG using 12-sided dice. Michael, really great to have you here with us.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Could you start off by telling us a bit about yourself, your pronouns, and what sort of projects you have going on right now?
Sure. So again, it's Michael, he, him pronouns. I am the, co-lead or co-founder of the RPG Academy podcast. We've been podcasting for, 12, 13 years now. We have way too many episodes.
So many
episodes. We have also so many different types of shows. But so if there's anything that you are interested in RPG space, we probably have a show that covers it. We have GM theory shows. We have interviews with designers and creators, Kickstarter coverage, actual plays, and that kind of thing. So yeah, if you're interested in RPG podcasts at all, we probably have a show type that you might be interested in.
Absolutely.
And just as a person, I'm a father. I have two boys, 12 and 13. This is their first year coming with me to AcadeCon.
Oh.
For the last couple years, I've started bringing them to some other local cons that I go to, but this is the first time here, and they are absolutely loving it. So,
very cool.
And, my youngest, this is not really a question, but I'm going to say it anyways because I love it. So, my oldest ran a D&D game yesterday.
Oh.
So he's been running a game for some of his friends, but this was his first time running a convention game.
Oh, that's very cool.
I didn't run a convention game until I was in my 30s,
Yeah.
And he's 13, and he was super nervous about it. And one of the players is another child who comes with her dad, and he literally just sent me an email, said that she loved the game.
Oh,
might be her favorite game she played. She's just talking about it the whole way.
Oh, nice.
So it just like melts my heart. So
that's amazing.
So me wanting to tell that story tells you everything you need to know about me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's so cool. I love the energy that we have at the convention here this year. And I'm gonna ask you some questions about that after we talk about the game.
Cool.
And I'm just really happy to have you here with us. So getting into the episode, since this is an abridged version of our normal format, we're going to be sticking to the highlights of the system with a special focus on character creation. So without further ado, how about we find out what this game is all about?
What's in a game?
Fantastic.
All right. Could you start off by telling us a bit about the core concept of Action 12 Cinema?
So the long version of the story is that I love the D12 dice. Unironically, I think it is the best die to roll at the table.
Unsung hero of the dice because it feels so good to roll.
Right. It's got a good heft. It's got a good roll. It doesn't just clunk like a 4 or tumble like a D6. It's got a good roll to it, but it's not as big as the D20.
Yeah.
There's no rational behind it, but I truly love the D12 and I want more games to use it.
Yeah.
So Action 12 Cinema started as an actual joke, like a literal, how many D12s can I get people to roll at one time? So it started off as like this very complex game. And actually the original name was Michael's Ridiculously and Needlessly Overly Complicated Rules Light RPG. Because it was a joke.
Yeah.
And it was just like, again, how many D12s can I get you to roll, play and pretend with your friends? But time after time, because I started at AcadeCon, and again, I keep saying it was a joke.
Yeah.
But after the games, people would say, that was a lot of fun. They say there's a lot of needless complexity in your rules-like game, but this was still fun. And so after the jokiness kind of faded, I'm like, maybe there's actually something here. So I started shaving off all the needlessly and ridiculously complicated parts. And what I ended up with is it's a GM-less game. It's a very simple, it's a D12 dice pool system. Right. Very simple the way it runs. But it's designed to emulate bad movies. The bad but fun movies.
Yes.
So I think Tremors.
Yep.
I think Tremors is a perfect representation of the type of movie that you can play out in our game. Any of the Sharknado movies. That's a little more into the cheese, but that would be right at home in this game as well.
Any of the Arnold Schwarzenegger style movies for the most part.
Yeah, like the really old ones, Sylvester Stallone, anything, Van Damme, any of those movies. Because I'm closer to 50 than to 40. I grew up watching bad movies. I love bad movies. And bad action movies specifically. And again, that's kind of where the title comes from, is like I grew up like WGN, TBS, TNT, which some of those came a little bit later, but I would be like those Saturday afternoon action blocks. Yes. And so the Action 12 cinema is basically action cinema with 12 in the middle because we use D12 dice only. So that's where the name came from. So the whole point is that you're playing bad movies. Yes. And it's a GM-less game, so there's a lot of loosey-goosiness, but then anything that just doesn't make sense, well, you just roll into it, that's a bad movie. That's why I couldn't hold an accent for the whole game, so that's why it's a different actor, right? And, sometimes there's plot holes because we focus on the action. Yeah. So you have an action scene, then you have just like a little improv scene, and then you have your next action beat. If it doesn't fit together, it's because it's a bad movie. Like it's all part of the joke that it doesn't make sense that we were there and now we're here.
They cut the scene that made those scenes make sense.
Yeah, it was an editing choice. So, that's why we're daylight, but we were night before. All those kind of things. So it's just part of the joke that it doesn't always work, but it works because it's not supposed to.
That's amazing. You're saying all the right things for me. So I'm really excited about this. So what sort of setting specifically do we play in then? And then what do characters actually do in the game?
So the setting, because it's GM-less, it's all based on D12 tables. Ooh. So you basically, everything you can roll. Now you can always choose, or if you roll something that you just don't like, you can always re-roll or then pick, but everything is based on that. So the first thing you're going to roll is your genre. Yeah. And it, or what I say, you're just straight action movie. So anything that's like modern day, probably crime or like military hero sort of thing. That's just your action movies, your Die Hards, your anything with Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger. But then we have all the genres. So you could do Western, but action Western, horror, action horror, comedy, action fantasy, like Cold and Conquer. And then on the very last one, if you get a 12, it's a mashup. So you'd roll 2 and mix them together. And actually last year, I ran one of the last play tests before we went to the Kickstarter. And I wore my Malcolm Reynolds costume. I'm a Firefly fan. Yeah. And we sat down and someone says, well, do you just want to play science fantasy? I was like, well, let's roll it. We rolled mashup, got science fantasy. Oh, so we got to play Firefly basically anyway. So that's great.
That's so good.
So that's the first thing. So actually take a step back. So we do include safety tools. Yeah. I'm a big believer in safety tools. In particular, we focus on like the movie rating. So we go, is this a PG-13 game? Yeah. Here's kind of what that means. Is it an R-rated game? Here's kind of what that means. And then we also include lines and veils. Yes. Because I think those two together, especially for my game, it just makes sense. Because you're like, this is what I don't want to have. Yeah. And then if something goes, I didn't realize I didn't want that, but now I do, we can add, the X card, the lines and veils and X card. Yep. So you're like, okay, actually now I do realize I didn't want that, so we can move away. Yeah. And that's also built into the game that scene's just over. It's just an editing choice or something, budgetary reasons. Like we were in the middle of a fight, a spider showed up, all of a sudden we're somewhere else. Part of the joke that it's a bad movie, we don't have to explain it, move on. Right. You set your era. So like maybe you're playing a science fiction top story that's set in the year 3000, but the movie is being made in the 50s. So then you have like the old, cardboard on wire style.
Oh, that's amazing.
Or are you modern day CGI budget? Right. Those types of things. So then you that is just a choice. You don't have to roll for that. And then there's just like the different things like who the mastermind is. And there's a bunch of charts. It could be, yourself from a different time period. It could be monsters, vampires, pirates, There's one playtest where we rolled pirates were the bad guy, but we had already said like it decided it was like a high school drama.
Yeah.
So it turns out the pirates were the opposing high school mascot.
Oh.
So part of the fun too is that you have to take some of these choices that don't always make sense and make them make sense.
Yeah.
In one playtest, we decided it's going to be like an urban thriller, and we rolled wizard for the bad guy. So we said, okay, well, it's just like it's a CEO Wizard Corp. So the CEO of Wizard Corp was the titular wizard that we had to fight. And to me, that is the thing that I really enjoy about role-playing games is that like almost like creativity, like how do we make this make sense?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to make perfect sense because it's a bad movie,
Exactly.
but it's fun to try and shave the corners off some things.
Yeah.
So it's all based on D12 rolls. And then we have what we call obstacles because it's a very simple game. All the conflicts are boiled down to obstacles. And the obstacles are very generic in nature, again, so you can flavor them however you want. So in one case, like quicksand, classic, right?
Yeah.
So in one of the play tests, we ended up shrinking was one of the problems. So for that one, we decided that the quicksand was that we were in a skyscraper that was being shrunk. And we had to get out before it got so small that we were killed. So that's how we interpreted quicksand for that story. So what you would do is you would roll for 6 obstacles. There's fight is on all the charts twice. So there's all kinds of fights.
Yeah.
Because it's an action movie. And then you lay them out in the order that you want to engage with them. So you have 1 obstacle in Act 1, you have 2 in Act 2, and then you have 3 in Act 3.
Nice.
But in Act 3, 2 of those only come in with half the value of like how to overcome it, and they work as like a defense. You can't actually fight the main bad until you do the other 2.
Yeah.
So you might have like in one playtest we had 2 fights and a magical defenses. So we had to overcome the guards and the magical barrier before we could fight the evil necro dragonmancer.
Yeah.
And again, it's all loosey-goosey, but that's kind of the way it lays out.
Nice.
And then between each act, you just have a no rolling required improv scene of like, how do we reset? Like, what is the drama we try to bring in? Do we build relationships between characters? Or do we just like, we're all on a plane and now we're where we go? Because it doesn't need to make sense.
Absolutely. But
that's basically the layout of the games. You have 1 obstacle, 2, and then 3.
Yeah, it feels like you're storyboarding the movie.
Very much. All the art in the game looks like storyboards. Like
nice.
They're all black and white basically, and some of them even have things like dolly move, like a note from like hey, we should put the camera here, or are you sure we have the budget for this?
Yep.
So all the art I love the art. I was so lucky with who I was able to use.
Yeah.
Storyboards is exactly what we're going for.
Amazing. That sounds so cool. And then it sounds like your characters are just playing out each of the scenes. Are you playing the actual characters, or are you playing actors playing the characters?
Either or both.
Amazing.
Yeah. So sometimes you might have someone almost like a voice, like being the director. Sometimes we have people who've slipped into the editor, sound mixer. Usually you're playing a character in the movie, but sometimes you'll make the joke where like you had to change actors. That's why my accent's different now. Or just in between acts, it's like I'm a completely different person and no one ever brings it up.
Yeah.
So it very much leans into that bad movie style. But for the most part, you're playing a character in a movie, but it does slip into and out of some of the meta.
Nice meta, fourth wall breaking stuff going on there. That's perfect.
And I would be remiss. So one of the big things that we did is tropes. Obviously action movie tropes are classic. That's what makes bad action movies bad, is the overindulgence in tropes. So one of the things that you do is you select, or you either choose or you roll randomly. We have like over 100 tropes that we've called out. You can always use tropes. You should always use tropes. But these specific 5, you can leverage them. And anytime you use a character sheet ability, we call it leveraging. So I'm going to leverage a relationship. I'm going to leverage an ability. I'm going to leverage a trope. You get a bonus die to your die pool.
Oh, okay.
So this is like, okay, I'm not going to look at the explosion, so I get to roll an extra D12 this time.
Right.
If you use it, you cross it off. And any that aren't used of the 5 can move into Act 2, or you can be like, I'm not feeling that, let's re-roll more. So each act, you're going to have 5 tropes that you can leverage.
Right.
For an extra die, but you can either carry them over if you're like, I really want to get to this one, but I think it's a climax one, or you can just re-roll randomly, or you can just make up your own. And again, that's how it works. So the way the game setup works, we have a form. It's called a production sheet. So again, lean into the movie thing.
Yeah.
So we have one for our cast as we make our characters, the obstacle, the bad guy, the era. So it's just like a form that everyone has. If we play in person, everybody gets their own copy.
Sure.
Because I've ran into my handwriting is terrible. And if I'm, especially in a con game, I'm trying to be really fast.
Yeah.
and then no one can read what I wrote. So you all write your own. If you're playing digitally, like we don't have digital tools, but like a Google sheet, so it can be typed and everyone can reference it.
Nice.
So the production sheet gets filled out before you go into the gameplay. But for me, the production sheet is play.
Yeah.
You should be having fun during that part.
Absolutely.
Too.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, character creation and world building and all that sort of stuff, one of the best parts of role-playing games.
If not the best.
If not the best.
Yes.
Exactly. So then what sort of materials then do we need to play a game of Action 12 Cinema?
So if you're playing in person, I would suggest physical copies of the production sheet and physical copies of the character sheet. You certainly could get by with digital. I just think I'm a tactile person. Like I still like physical books. I have a hard drive full of PDFs I will never touch. I physically need books in my hands, but other people may feel differently.
Yeah.
And D12s, either physical or digital. Again, I want to roll the math rocks.
That's the whole point.
So most of the time, you're going to roll between 3 and 5 D12. There's a few special occasions where you can roll up to 7.
Ooh.
You will never roll more than 7. So 7 D12 would be a good thing to have, or enough that you can mix and match. I don't like to roll 2 and then roll 2 and roll 1. I want to roll 5.
Exactly.
So I usually have at least 7 D12 with me.
Nice. Very cool.
Pens, pencils, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What sort of characters can people make in the game then?
Bad action movie characters.
Yeah.
So you always start with creating the character, because that is your avatar in the game. Again, even though you might slip in and out of the actor, director, that kind of good stuff. But you just make them up.
Okay.
So you have 4 abilities: brains, brawn, charm, and moxie. And they pretty much call them out the way you would think. Brains, how smart you are; brawn, how strong you are; charm is how good you are at social. It goes like manipulation, deception, that kind of thing. And moxie is sort of like luck or grit or chutzpah, or as I say, it's anything that is not brains, brawn, or charm. Okay. So like sometimes we'll face superheroes and people will map their superpower to moxie, just because it makes sense. Yeah. Like if I can, shoot laser beams out of my eyes, that becomes my moxie score. You get 4 numbers that you can use. You have 0, +1, +1, and +2, and you get to choose where you put them. Okay. So if you're the brains, probably put +2 in that spot. You just map them out however you want. So because it's a GM-less game, it just kind of rotates around the table. Everyone has to go before anyone goes again, but there's no set order. Okay. I interact with the obstacle however I want. And the key aspect of the game is it doesn't need to make sense. Right. The dice tell me if it works or not. Okay. No sense of reality. So one of the examples we use in the book is if you want to attack the space vampire with a stake and try to kill them, you can, or you can challenge them to a dance-off. And if the dice say the dance-off wins, you have fixed the space vampire problem. Yeah. Doesn't matter if that makes any sense to anyone else. As long as it makes sense to you, that's exactly fine. So you're going to put your dice pool together. You always start with 1d12. You will never not roll at least 1. And then you modify that pool based off of your attributes first. So if I have a +2 brains and I'm like, well, this feels like a brains roll, I would add 2 more and now I'm at 3. You have 5 skill slots, which you can make up at the beginning. You can leave them blank, make them up in play. That's also a trope of action movies. Like, oh, you didn't know I spent a year spelunking in Argentina? Right. I know how to do that. So you can just make up a skill, and skills are either rated at +2 or +1. So you would add the appropriate number. If you get to 5, you're done. Yeah. But there's sometimes where it's either the game will force you or just it's fun to not always use your best attributes. I like to say sometimes the scientist decides to throw hands against the alien bounty hunter. Right. And they get lucky. So sometimes you don't use your best attributes and you may not have a full dice pool of 5. That's when you leverage your relationships or your tropes. So your relationships can be used one of 2 ways. One is if you're physically in the scene with me, I can be like, hey, Ryan, can your character help me attack the dragon? Then I get a +1 because of your relationship. Right. Or it could be, I can't let my daughter down again. Damn it, I missed her last recital. I will defeat the vampires and get home in time. So that emotional lift will give me an extra one. And then if I want to bring in a trope, that's another one. So if you're rolling less than 3d12, you're not trying. Right. You should be getting to 5 most of the time. Okay. And then every character has a heroic trait. It's what makes you the hero of the movie. And it can be things like you're just never give up, too stupid to know better, lucky, charming. Like it can really be anything you want. We have a list of examples, but you can just any word or phrase that you want, you can use. And you can leverage that a couple of times during the game to re-roll. And then you have your Achilles heel. And that is the thing that gets you into trouble.
Okay.
And it can often be the same thing. Like you'd be like, I never give up is my heroic trait. I never give up is also my Achilles heel. And when you use your Achilles heel, you get 2 bonus dice. That's the only time you can go above 5. So you could get to 7.
Okay.
But if you only had 4 to start with, it'd get you to 6. But if you roll with your Achilles heel, because there are 1s are bad, 12s are great. So if you roll any 1s with an Achilles heel roll, it counts as double bad, and you can't fix it with any other mechanic.
Oh no!
So there's some mechanics to let you re-roll things, change things. But if you did this with your Achilles heel, 1s are really bad, and there's nothing you can do about it because your Achilles heel put you in that bad situation.
Oh, wild!
But there's no way to die in the game because it's an action movie.
Yeah.
So all that means is basically more fun.
Okay.
Hopefully that's the goal. Is that it's just like we made things more complicated.
Yeah.
That just gives us more opportunity to do fun, silly stuff.
Oh yeah, and like every action movie, there's always a scene where the hero's down on their luck, and like you know, it looks like things are going to go
hope is
south.
Lost. Yes.
But then something comes out at the very end. Absolutely. That sounds amazing. Do we have enough knowledge now to get into and making some people?
Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely.
All right, let's make some people.
Let's make some people.
So the first thing that we would do with a character is basically you would come up with a name/description. And the description is basically very vague on purpose. Some people like to put things like 6 foot tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, stoic. And some people like to put a lady who's looking for love and kicking ass. So it's just for you, whatever helps you visualize what this person is.
Okay.
So it can be a word, it can be a phrase, it can be a physical description. It's truly up to you. So whatever you would feel like.
Okay.
So do you have any thoughts? I mean, think action movie.
Yeah.
But do you have an idea for who you might want to start off with?
Gosh, I want like my quintessential action movie stars were, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, all those from that era, right? I want my movie star to be kind of like, I don't know, maybe more of a Jason Statham sort of like archetype.
Okay.
Very like to the point, brash.
Yeah.
Like really straight line thinking sort.
So a classic thing for me would just be like a Jared Statham. I mean, because we all know who you mean at that point.
Yep.
But whatever helps you visualize and then project and portray, like, okay, I know what he's going for because he's going with Jared Statham. I'm a fan of the person over their head. So like the nerd, the scientist, someone who think like Nicolas Cage's character in The Rock. You know, he's like the bomb disposal expert, but he's not rough and tumble. Then he gets put into that situation. So I think I will go with, which we did not do the other thing. So like we don't have a setting, we don't have an era, we don't have a genre.
Yeah.
So this is very sort of generic. I might flavor it. Like if we were in a fantasy setting, I might be
do we want to do?
We can.
Let's do the world building.
Okay, all right. So that, unfortunately, it's going to take me a second. I got to get to that file. So
no, that's fine.
Take a quick second.
No, I would love to do some world building.
Throw that out.
I'm still going to be Jared Statham's son.
Statham's, I love it. Okay.
And I'm just going to make it more ridiculous. The second. Jared Stathamson, the second.
Excellent. All right. So if we're following in order, the first thing we would do is set our rating and use our other safety tools. So
all right.
We suggest by default PG-13 is what you would go for.
I think PG-13 feels good for the family-friendly-ish nature of our show.
Okay. So we would describe that in here as that usually means there will be limited, if any, drug use, brief non-sexual nudity, perhaps some adult language, but not sexualized adult language. Basically, you get one F-bomb, use it wisely. Violence will not be graphic or gory. Children may be put in danger, but no individual child will be seriously harmed, and likely the dog survives as well.
Oh, nice.
So that is sort of the standard boilerplate PG-13.
That's interesting.
And then we would say safety tools, again, lines and veils, and then the X card. So are there any lines? I'll say for me, non-consensual sex is a line. Don't ever want to see it. Consensual sex is a veil. If we need to seduce someone, it'll be behind a closed door next day, next scene.
Absolutely. Yeah. That sort of stuff is pretty much standard for me as well. And, none of the big isms and things like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this. Yeah.
Okay. So, and we'll just kind of lean into the X card. I mean, because we're not actually going to play the game. None of this should come up.
Yeah.
But if something does, we can X card it out and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, boom. So the first thing we're going to do is pick our genre. So again, we can just do standard action, or we can roll a d12. Let's roll a d12 if you don't mind.
All right.
All right.
8.
That is an action space. So in the book, we would describe that as basically any other genre. It just happens to be set in space.
Oh.
Some examples would be Enemy Mine, Robinson Crusoe on Mars, or The Last Starfighter.
Oh, gosh, that is so good. Do we want an action movie on a generational starship?
Perfect. Yep.
That's like, light speed or sublight speed going multiple years between planets.
Okay. Yeah, that absolutely works for me.
Okay. Very cool.
All right. So then the next thing we would need to do is set our era. So is this a contemporary movie with all of modern special effects? Are we making this in the 60s? When do we want to be set? Either way, it all works.
Yeah.
It just, we're going to lean into some of the meta tropes based off of what we're doing.
Yeah, I would love to have, because I would love to be playing a movie that I would be willing to see, right?
Okay.
And so like I would love like top of the line special effects pumped into this B style movie.
Perfect. So we'll say modern day, and we just happen to have an unlimited special effects budget.
Yeah.
All right.
Like how did they like
exactly
the writing?
It's a student film that like Jeff Bezos is funding or something.
Absolutely.
All right. So now we're going to pick our BBEG, which is big, bad, evil person. So roll me a D12 and then another one.
All right. 1 and 4.
Okay. Sometimes you get just karma or what's the word? Kismet. Aliens is our bad guy.
Of course.
We on this list, we also had environmental or natural disasters, like black holes, meteor storms, solar flares.
Okay.
Zombies, vampires, kaiju, cults, pirates, terrorists, mad scientists, evil corporations, secret society, or robots.
Wow.
But we happen to roll aliens.
Yes. This is very tropey. Amazing.
Right. Then we got to come up with our plot. We listed as the paper thin plot because you do need one, don't you? All right. So I need 2 D12s as well.
All right. 11 and 1.
All right. So that is someone or something knows what you did.
Oh.
A couple others on that list would be mistaken identity, a monster with a personal grudge, transported to a magical world, pulled back into a world you left behind, so those sorts of things. But we have, so someone or something knows what you did.
Interesting.
So we could, something like maybe we're not supposed to be on the ship. Maybe we lied, stowed away, and so it's on a generational ship and we're not in cryostasis.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that. So we're actually, there's that movie, wasn't very good, with Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt a few years ago that did that, like he woke her up out of cryo sleep.
They woke up early. Yeah. I like the thought though that it's like a bustling generational ship. Not quite as like weird as in WALL-E.
Okay.
Where everybody's in like a resort or whatever.
Right, yeah.
I think it's like you've got crew manning the stations and everybody's got families and stuff, and knowing that their kids are going to grow up taking these positions eventually, and like maybe multiple generations down the line, we'll finally get to a planet that's inhabitable for whatever reason. And so there's recreational area. There's all sorts of stuff in here. There's even like a mall that you can go to, and people are still making stuff and whatnot. So
since we have aliens as our bad guy, it could be something that maybe the aliens have already infiltrated our ship and we don't know that.
Yeah.
Or it could be that maybe we are unknowingly trespassing in their territory. It's like the Klingon line in Star Trek. We didn't know any better. We're just trying to find a place to live, but we're now in someone else's territory.
Yeah.
And so they're chasing us because we're not supposed to be there.
I do like the thought of like aliens have infiltrated and like are either like invisible or able to, blend in.
Okay. You ever watched They Live?
Or yeah, I haven't watched that though.
It's a deliciously bad movie. It's one with Rowdy Piper in it.
Oh gosh.
And that one, aliens have invaded Earth, and he has special sunglasses, and when he wears them, he can see who is like the aliens. So maybe they've infiltrated. We have learned that, and they know that we know.
Yeah, I like that. Like we're the only ones that figured it out.
Yep.
Like we knew something weird was going on, but now we actually figured it out.
All right.
Okay.
So they are trying to basically keep us quiet before we can reveal their presence.
So was it your character then that maybe made some tech that discovered how to see them?
Yeah, I think that probably was something where again, like I'm a geek. There's no shade, but like I'm a nerdy geeky kid. I'm playing with technology, and it was just a complete happenstance. Like I was just goofing around, but I got some like weird reading.
Yeah.
And someone's like, well, obviously you've messed it up. And I'm like, I don't think so. Like heat signatures or some sort of biomass signature.
Yeah.
And so I just kept tinkering, and maybe I don't even know yet what I know.
Yeah.
But I know that there's something that's not right with these readings, that they've realized that they're being tracked or that kind of thing. So it could be where like, I know that person, something's weird, but I don't know what yet. Type of thing. And again, a lot of this we can solidify in play on what it actually means.
Yeah, and I like the thought that my character, like the straight shooter action guy, like knows, like recognizes it for some reason. Is like, I know exactly what this is.
I know what that is. Maybe I came to you or okay, how about again?
Oh, if you're the genius kid, and maybe I'm a teacher at the school.
Oh, okay. There's got to be school on the ship.
So I'm the like.
You're the inexplicable action hero teacher.
Yep.
It's like,
I gotta save the
kids. That's exactly what we're going for. Yeah. So maybe so this was a science experiment.
Yeah.
It's like the science fair.
I'm the science teacher.
You're the science teacher. I did a science fair.
Yep.
And I made a thing, and it did a thing, but I didn't know what it did. And so I'm like, here's my thing. And then you're like, wait, that's and again, that can be as much explanation as we need to start.
That's so good.
Okay, perfect. All right. So after we have that, we need to roll for 6 obstacles.
Okay.
Now, one of the things we say in a standard movie, you're going to play the 3-act structure. So 1, then 2, then 3. Just for simplicity here, if we want to shorten it and just do 2 or 3, just to kind of get a feel for it, or we can do all 6.
Let's do all 6.
Okay,
I've got time.
All right, each one of them requires 2 rolls. So just give me 2 d12s, and I'll tell you what we got.
All right, here we go. 11 and 4.
Okay, that is fight. Again, fight comes up a lot. So there is a separate category for ambush, which would be a fight that either we initiate or is initiated on us without chance for a pre-warning. But fights are generally, every action movie, there's going to be a fight.
Of course.
We've got one.
We've got a fight.
Yep. So we need 5 more of these. And then we put them in the order that we want to introduce them.
Beautiful. 4 and 4.
4 and 4 is collect all the pieces. So this is any sort of situation where maybe the gizmo we need, we've got to like salvage from different places, or it's got, rod of 7 parts broken up, whatever. And it can even also be putting the team back together. Maybe there's certain people we need to get onto our team.
Oh, yeah.
There's something or someone that we've got to bring together.
Okay. 2 and 5.
That is a ticking clock or bomb. So any sort of situation where we have a limited amount of time or something gets worse, which can be a literal bomb, or just any sort of like, if we don't solve it between here and there, is unsolvable.
Okay.
Okay.
12 and 6.
12 and 6. That is fortifying the lair. Again, think Home Alone.
Yeah.
So we've got to secure our place against some outside force.
The school, probably.
Probably the school. Yep.
Probably. Amazing. 1 and 6.
That is gathering your resources. That is actually a special type of obstacle. We list in the explanation that you can make that just a montage and set it with like some sort of soundtrack, so you don't actually have to necessarily roll against that one. Just okay, I'm getting this, you're getting that, and then we just kind of like montage it out. Or we can also play it as an action beat too.
Very cool. 7, 11 last.
7 and 11 is a mystery to be solved.
Okay.
So that's all 6, right?
Yeah, that's all 6.
So we want 1 in Act 1. That's basically your inciting incident.
Yeah.
So that's what kicks off the movie. In Act 2, we want 2 that are either overlapping or they lead into each other. And then in our third act, we have our main final obstacle, which solves the problem. And then we have 2 minor obstacles that are in the way first. Both of the minor obstacles have to be taken care of before we can start applying any successes to the final one. So do you have any thoughts on what you think the initial incident should be?
It really feels like the initial incident should be mystery to be solved.
Okay.
Right? Like we happened upon this weirdness. Now we have to figure out the mystery to solve it to get to the rest of the movie, right?
I think that means so we got the science experiment. We know it does a thing, but we don't know what it does yet.
Yeah.
And when we figure that out, like, oh, it's aliens.
It's aliens.
So the end of Act 1 is we know what we're up against. We have solved that mystery.
Yeah.
Also, did you watch the newest Fantastic Four movie, which is absolutely terrible?
I have not, because I heard it was absolutely terrible.
It is absolutely terrible. I love Fantastic Four. It's one of my favorite comics growing up. I have such love for that. But that one kind of starts off with Reed Richards as a kid. He makes a device that he thinks is a teleporter. He doesn't know that it's actually a multi-dimensional teleporter. And a different person goes, you don't even know what you... So that's what I'm thinking of is I've invented a thing. It does a thing, but I don't actually know what it does.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
So once we have discovered the aliens in Act 2, might be a good time for a fight, but we could also save the fight for the finale.
Yeah, I think the finale is where the fight... Like, I love the thought of this action movie being mostly like intrigue, and then finally the action's at the very end.
Okay, we got to have at least one. It's an action movie.
I know, right?
It's a bad action movie. So we definitely want fight in the third one.
Yeah, so I think Act 2 has to be like, there has to be a gathering your resources at the end of Act 2, right?
Okay.
Or it could be the beginning of Act 3. I guess let's see what else we got in here. The collecting all the pieces, fortifying the layer, ticking clock, and a fight is at the end.
So I feel like maybe what happens is the fortifying the layer goes with the fight. Like we're going to be secure and they're trying to get to us. So that could be one of the minor obstacles. We have to make sure the layer is ready before they show up.
Yep.
So that slots that into Act 3. Gathering your resources is also kind of like gathering all the pieces. Those are similar. So I honestly would probably suggest we re-roll that one or pick something else.
Yeah.
Pick one of those to keep and then pair it with something that makes more sense.
Okay. I think we could probably make it make sense. Gathering resources, we have to do that before fortifying the layer. Okay. So that could be the beginning of Act 3, right? Now that we figured out the mystery in Act 1, now we have to collect the pieces to figure things out. But then we figure out that there's a ticking time bomb of some sort.
Okay, that works.
So collect all the pieces. Or if we want to, we could ticking time bomb, ticking clock first in Act 2.
Okay.
Or we can ramp up the action at the end of Act 2.
Okay, yeah, that could be it. So that we end Act 2 knowing that maybe we catch on to what the aliens are trying to do. They're going to replace the leader of our ship. Yeah. And so if we don't stop that, then no one's ever going to believe us. Exactly. So they're going to replace the counselor, president, whatever. So we have to stop that. And there's a big ceremony. It's like our yearly... And, we launched in this year, and every year we celebrate that big event. That event is when the switch is going to take place. So we have until that happens to solve it.
Yeah, I think the collecting all the pieces is getting the evidence.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So we're collecting all the evidence we can to bring to the captain of the ship. And then we find out, hey, we need to do this. We need to get it to them fast.
And probably the captain of the ship has already been switched because once we present our evidence, we're now the targets.
Exactly.
All right. Okay.
I like that. And then we find out that, we just presented to one of the aliens. We didn't realize we were doing that. Now we have to go fortify our position because they're going to be coming for us. So we fortify the school. We gather the resources to really action up the school. with like turrets and all this stuff.
I mean, we got this sci-fi or extreme budget, so we can do some really cool things. I could think of the lower budget version where we're taking like the mats from gym, the ropes from rope climbing. We're building like nets. We've got like super advanced science department and like tech department. We've got the like the shop kids making mechs for us. Oh yeah, it's so over the top. Yeah, I'm seeing the same exact thing. That's great.
That's perfect. So that's fortifying the layer, and then just the big fight at the end, just to really ramp up the action. This sounds amazing.
We're going to end on a high note.
Yeah.
So we don't have everything yet, but with what we have, I think my character, I'm going to just be called the kid. I'm an orphan. And so my parents died when I was very young, so they were never able to like give me that career that I would have grown into. So I'm just kind of like, I'm a free floater, but I have a knack with technology. Yeah. So I don't actually have a role in the ship. And maybe I'm friendly with our teacher. Yeah. And everybody just calls me kid. Like that's my name. I'm Kid.
Awesome.
All right. So after we have chosen our obstacles, and for almost all of these, we have explanations. So if you, for example, collect all the pieces, we have some examples like this could be putting the team together, finding the missing sections of the rod of 6.5 pieces. And it could also be finding all the clues to solve a mystery. So if you need inspiration, we try to make it easy because most of these I'm familiar with, but not everyone is. So we include some explanations for most of them. All right. So then we need 2 locations.
Okay.
On the production sheet, it has spaces for 6, but we want our starting location where the movie will begin, and we want to pick our final location where it will end, and then we can create locations in the middle as we need. I feel like we've kind of already done that work. I think our final location is going to be the schoolroom.
Really? Right.
We've already kind of said that's where we're going to fortify, and that's where they're going to try to attack us. And we could also start in the same place. Maybe it's at the school science fair that's also in like the gymnasium of the school. Yeah,
I like the start being the interior of the school and the end being the exterior of the school.
Perfect. So interior, exterior. And then part of the game, because it's GMless and improv, at any time you can make a new location. You're just like, okay, we're in the cafeteria, we're in the brick, we're in the whatever. And generally there's just a couple things we want to, whenever we have a location, like any sort of like quick physical descriptions, like is it big and airy and robust? Is it tight and cramped? Is it hot? Is it cold? Just enough so that we kind of all visualize sort of the same thing. Yeah. But also generic enough that we're not spending too much time going, well, does it have 4 windows in front or is it 3? That kind of thing. So as long as we have the close enough visual image. So is this school, because we're on a generational ship, is it just like an interior room, or is there like a giant space with a physical building inside that?
I think that's the thing, right? It's like we've got these large domed areas of the ship that have these like exterior like scenery
sort of thing.
So like they didn't have to build this on a soundstage. They're actually out in the real world, like filming at a school and everything, and it's explained away. Oh, there's holograms in the sky creating
birds,
false
clouds.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. And again, we have the budget for that. Yep. So basically, interior of this physical school inside a biome, and then extra. Okay, perfect. All right.
Amazing.
We have, it's sort of like an optional sort of thing. We say to maybe each location should have what I call the worst possible thing. Like what might possibly go wrong there. Because if you roll your die and you get all those ones, sometimes you have to introduce the worst possible thing.
Sure.
So some examples would be like if you're in the engine room, the worst possible thing is if the coolant fails, the engine overheats and the ship explodes. We don't have to come up with a worst possible thing, but do you have any instant thoughts of like what would be really bad that could happen at the school?
Like decoupling the biodome from the generational ship.
So there's like these like bubbles on a thing, and it could actually detach.
It was built this way for safety. Like if the main ship was to have critical failures in the engine room, for instance, all of these biomes could like safely detach.
Yep.
And
or
then,
when we get where we're going.
Yeah, or when that's the ultimate. Like if there's nothing wrong, then they can detach and all land separately. And then now you've got not only safe biomes for everybody, now you can use the rest of the generational ship to create pathways between them while you terraform the planet.
Yep.
That's the goal, right?
So an unintentional decoupling would be like the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, because then we'd be left behind, and then the ship might have to slow down, and that could take weeks
or years.
Yeah, or years.
Yeah. All right, perfect. That is our worst possible thing there. All right. So then the next thing we do, because we're jumping around a little bit. My apologies. So normally we actually physically create our film. We dictate our characters last, and we would create supporting characters first. But we kind of did this in reverse order. So each of us would come up with one supporting character. So these are the NPCs, the helpers, the loved ones that could be put in danger, the allies we could go to help, an adversary that we are somewhat not like completely rivals against, but maybe we have a sort of friendly rivalry with. So do you have any thoughts on who your supporting character might be?
The old principal that's like 2 days from retirement.
Okay. Too old for this stuff.
I'm too old for this.
Okay. All right. So this is someone that, I mean, they don't have any stats. They're just someone in the game that and your character does not have to have a relationship with the NPC you create. We're just creating a cast of characters.
Yeah.
So most games are going to have 3, 4, 5 players. So you're going to have 3, 4, 5 NPCs. And then as we create our characters, we'll say, okay, my character has a relationship with that NPC. So I'm going to say that I am friendly with a janitor who is kind of part of the reason why I have all this technology stuff is that like when when things are about to be thrown away, he will move them to, hey, why don't you grab that before I put it in the waste compactor or something like that. So I will call him Samson popped in my head for some reason. So Samson, the custodial engineer who helps me get my stuff.
Nice. And the principal that's too old for this is going to be named Jennifer.
Okay.
She'll do anything to protect her kids.
Perfect. So with all of that, now it's time for us to create our heroes. So we have name and description, which we've kind of already done. We have our attributes. So again, you have brains, brawn, charm, and moxie. And then you have a 0, a +1, a +1, and a +2.
I'm gonna change my name a little bit. The actor is Jared Stathamson II. He is playing the science teacher Billsby.
Okay.
So Mr. Billsby.
Mr. Billsby. I love it. And I'm just the kid. Everyone calls me the kid.
Mr. Billsby and the kid.
So I think it makes sense for brains for me to be my highest score. And so I'm going to put my +2 in brains. I'm a small kid, so I think brawn should be my 0. And by default, that means charm and moxie would be +1 for me.
Gosh, I think brawn makes the most sense to put a +2 in for me.
Yep.
Charm and moxie for sure. And 0 for brains.
You're a teacher, right?
Well, maybe I am the teacher, right? Maybe 0 for charm. That makes sense. Jason Statham is very he is charming, but he's very straight to the point, and he talks straight at you, and that could be off-putting to some folks probably.
Yeah. It also helps if you're not very likable why we don't get support right away.
Yeah.
So when we're trying to go hey, we have the information about this important thing, just go away.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So next we have our skills. So we have 5 spots for skills. You don't have to make up any of them now. You can make up them all up in the fly. 2 of the skills are rated at +2, and 3 will be rated at +1. My general suggestion is to create the 2 +2s, and then leave your +1s for just in the moment. This makes sense. I can spelunk, or I know how to fly a spaceship, or whatever.
Right.
And your skills literally can be anything that you want. We do have some lists of examples. I often will use action combat as a skill if I'm playing an action hero.
Yeah.
Anything that makes sense for action combat, then you get your +2. But we have things like arcana, bureaucracy, gymnastics, hacking, engineering, computers, science, seduction, wrestling. So any thoughts on what either of your 2 +2s would be?
I mean, science was one of them that first came to my mind. And I think, it's got to be something like action combat for a Jason Statham sort of movie.
Yep. And that would incorporate all, like even like the parkour stuff, like if you're jumping from thing to thing.
I mean, they do everything in that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just hand to hand. It's also like ranged weapons and driving and all that sort of stuff, using vehicles as weapons, all that sort of stuff. I think that works well.
Okay. I'm going to take gadgeteering, which means not only can I like tinker with gadgets, but I might be able to make a thing. Like I could maybe make a laser gun or a thing that shoots a net or freeze rays. So again, these are supposed to be very obtuse by design, so they can be used in a variety of circumstances.
Right.
It is sometimes fun, and we do cover it in the book, to come up with a very specific skill and then try to build a situation that perfectly allows you to use it. Like, because I can do this specific thing, it's applicable, which is why you have 5. You can do a little bit of both. So again, I think the +2s should probably be broadly applicable, and then the +1s, you can make them very specific. But it's really whatever you want to do. But I think my gadgeteering would be +2. And then I'm going to put navigation as +2.
Okay.
Because I'm an orphan. I don't actually have a job. I know the ship better than anyone. I know where all the hidey holes are, the Jeffrey tubes, I can get through the ship faster than anyone else. And that will help us when we're trying to get in or get out of wherever we're. So those will be my +2s. I'm going to leave my +1s open.
I can see like a 0G section of the ship. Would be really sweet. Gosh. And now I'm picturing all of these biomes are like on a rotating arm, creating artificial gravity. So we've got that going on. That's pretty cool. I would watch this movie in a heartbeat. Okay, so we got our skills, we got our stats, we got our scenario,
and then we do our relationships, because there's only 2 of us. It's I think we as we created them, we kind of solidified them
pretty much.
But we have space for 3 relationships. They can change and evolve over the story. So you could have the rivals into lovers, the friends into enemies. We suggest that each character has one with an NPC that was created. The way we created ours, I think we already kind of did, like, I already have a relationship with the janitor, you already have a relationship, and then we should have one relationship between each other, which we kind of already did because you're the teacher, I'm the student. So we've kind of already done that.
Handles every bit.
Right. But in other games, there might be a little bit more thought put into that and try to figure out and how everybody knows each other. And again, the relationships are for that leveraging. Since we're always in the scene, well, we may not always be in the scene together, but if we are in the scene together, we can always leverage each other because we're physically there to help. If we get separated, again, maybe it's a father-son sort of situation for you. Maybe, again, I can see your tragic backstory that you lost a child, and so you can't let me be in danger. But that's a way you can leverage that relationship to get a D12 if you need one.
Very cool. I like that.
Right. We need our heroic trait. What makes us heroes, and we're not just somebody else in this story? So a couple examples: brave, eternally optimistic, honest, intelligence, protective, selfless, wise, tactician. And it doesn't have to be a word, it can be a phrase. Think like fate, high concepts also would work here. I'm gonna go with plucky. I'm the terrible plucky kid in all these action movies. Okay.
I think we'll do anything for the kids.
Okay.
This is a very very in tune teacher.
Okay. So the way heroic traits work, again, it allows you to do some re-rolls. Throughout the game, you can re-roll up to 3 times. But normally you cannot re-roll once. If you use 2 of your 3, you can re-roll once.
Okay.
So basically you can either use it 3 times or twice. If you use it for once, then that takes 2 uses. But if you use the Achilles heel, you cannot then re-roll the once. Okay. Next is our Achilles heel. What gets us in trouble? And it could be, again, another trait, arrogant. Failure isn't an option, which then can cause collateral damage. I'm the smartest person in the room, which means if I'm not, I will easily be manipulated. So again, it can be a word or a phrase, but what could get you in trouble?
Okay. Let me say too focused.
Okay. So maybe you're not paying attention to some of the periphery.
Yeah, too focused on the target.
All right. I'm thinking my kid he's small. That helps me with like getting in and around, but like I don't have any brawn. Like if I get captured, I'm not going to get out.
Right.
So my Achilles heel is that. In my head, I'm usually able to wiggle in and out. So my smallness helps me, but I am small, and there's going to be times where that actually puts me like I can't reach things, I can't jump over things.
I'm just a kid.
All right. We have something. It's called your personal crisis. Because a staple of bad but fun action movies is that often the heroes are exactly the heroes we need for this situation, but their personal lives are falling apart.
Yeah.
Their spouse doesn't respect them anymore. They don't have the job they wanted, their finances. So you can choose to create a personal crisis that will somehow get solved along with the plot of the movie. It's completely optional. You don't have to do it. You can do it and then not engage with it. But the way it would work is whenever you build a dice pool, once it's done, if you voluntarily choose to pull one out and you still have any successes, then you can tick off a box towards your personal crisis. As long as you do that 3 times throughout the course of the game, you can then resolve your personal crisis at the end of the movie, your growth. So any instant thoughts on what your personal crisis might be?
I think like the catalyst for him becoming the teacher and learning science is his son became really sick, and he's been in intensive care since he was really young, right? So he's been in there for like maybe 6 or 7 years, and I picture like this movie being like we're fighting these aliens because they're very antagonistic and everything and very sneaky, but then we find the common ground after the fight. And like they have the cure.
Ooh, okay.
Like they happen to have the cure, and that's how I would eventually resolve it, right?
Okay. No, I like that. For me, I'm going to go with it. I don't feel like I belong. My parents died when I was young. I don't actually have a job. I have a lot of freedom, but I don't have any sense of like self-worth. So maybe I can find that throughout this movie. Right. We have a place for action movie one-liners. This is like those classic, stick around Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can create them ahead of time if you want to come up with like a catchphrase, but it's more for like writing them down. If we come up with one in the moment, we would jot them down. And then the last thing, we have a place for the name of the movie, but we fill that in at the end. So once the movie's over and we've experienced this, we go around and may have an idea like what might this be called once we have it. And then the last thing we need to do is come up with our tropes. So this is 2d12 rolls. We would come up with 5 to start. So again, you can always use tropes, or you should, but these are the 5 that we can use to get a bonus to our dice pool, get us to 5 if we're not already there.
Sure. So it's a 3 and 8.
3 and an 8. So the way these work, because there's so many tropes, every chart gives you 2, and you pick the one that you want to include.
Sure.
So 3 and 8, we have human chess or desperate object catch. Which again, human chess, the bad guys are forcing people to play chess and kill each other. Desperate object catch is like in Captain America Civil War when the bio and like Black Widow like does the little catch right before it hits and breaks, that kind of thing. Like something's going to fall, and if I don't catch it, we're all dead.
Yeah, I like the thought of like we are across the way in the like the desperate object catch, and it would be like you have to throw it through the 0G as we're spinning on either side of the wall.
And again, because we can decide in the moment what if I might be the object. Maybe I have to leave.
There you go.
Me. So just whenever you decide to apply it, you can basically like solidify exactly what it means.
I do like that though. Like the thought of doing that in this really makes for a good visual.
All right, I need 2 more rolls.
Great. 5-2.
5-2 is exploding fish tanks. Because again, if you don't know that, anytime you see a fish tank in an action movie, it's probably going to explode. Or Morse code. And that doesn't necessarily have to be actual Morse code, but it's some sort of secret communication. So it could be tapping on something to let you know, hand-eye motions. Maybe I even use like a language. Maybe we have our own little made-up language like Pig Latin. So we have to have some way of communicating secretly to each other.
I really like Morse code for this because if we're getting into the Jeffries tubes of the ship and everything, we're going to need to figure out a way to communicate over distance.
And it can also just be Morse code. Some of that. So it could be a situation where we're trying to communicate. Again, we'll decide what it is when we use it. Okay. Another 2 rolls.
6 and 10.
That is a giant foot of stomping. So think, just out of nowhere, a giant foot comes down. Ant-Man and Endgame is a good example. Or bodyguard babes. And that is when, for whatever reason, the bodyguards of the bad guy happen to all be beautiful women. Again, these don't always make sense. So we can be like, I don't like either of those. Or we can hold it and maybe it makes sense later.
Gosh. I think giant foot stomping makes a lot of sense if we're making battle mechs, right, to protect the school.
And we can always, again, it can get flavored differently. It's just any sort of like out of nowhere, like maybe it's a meteor that just comes in something in 0G and then just happens to crash at the right time. So once we decide to use it, we can solidify it.
I like it.
All right. 2 more rolls.
All right. 5 and 8.
5 and 8 is You're the Bait or Badass Driver. We do have explanations for all these if there are some that we don't know. It's at the end of the book. It lists them all out.
Okay. Gosh.
I mean, Jason Statham, there's a lot of car driving.
A lot of car driving.
So maybe we have like hover mail trucks that we're driving around, or it could literally be a car.
Yeah.
It could be the mechs. Like if we have mech suits in the final act, maybe we just carry this one through and you're just really good at driving a mech.
I do like that. I do like the thought of like mechs that partially transform into vehicles. And
bring Transformers into this or GoBots. Let's do it. Yeah.
Why not?
So that just basically means you're really good at driving. So if you're trying to use your vehicle in a way, you could leverage it if you don't already have 5. All right, I think we need one more for our starting 5.
1 and 7.
1 and 7. Forced to fight or cliff top caterwauling. So forced to fight again is where you're being forced to fight for the amusement of someone else. Quickening of the Dead would be a good example. Gene Hackman's character forces what's his name? Gladiator guy?
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Who was an ex-outlaw. He's trying to make him fight in the gunfight. He wouldn't.
Okay.
And then Clifftop Caterwauling is just like that moment of like release or exaltation when you're just like, oh, and you're just sort of screaming into the night. King Kong or the Incredible Hulk movie both have good examples of those. So of those two, I don't know that forced to fight really makes sense. Clifftop Caterwauling could, depending on the situation.
I can see that working, like either like because like it could be anybody doing that, right?
Right. It doesn't have to be us.
Yeah, because I could see like a cross, like you leaping for the desperate catch to catch you from there, and then
it looks like I fell.
Yeah,
But then my hand is like,
yep, absolutely.
Yep. And again, we may not use them. And if once we get through Act 1, we decide if there's any still on the list, do we want to carry them forward or do we want to re-roll? And we can decide then how we feel about it.
I like it.
All right. I think that is everything.
Wow.
Yeah, at that point. So we would, like if I was running this at a con game, I'd be like, hey, do you want to take a break?
Yeah.
You know, again, with like 4 or 5 people, it's a good like hour and a half.
Yeah.
Once you've done it a couple of times, it goes much faster. But the first time when you're explaining everything, it's going to take a good hour and a half.
Yeah.
So this would be like our bathroom break. And then we would come back and start the actual game.
Amazing.
So essentially, whoever goes first, you kind of have the ability, because we've got all these sort of nebulous things, but whoever goes first, they create what it actually means.
Okay.
Because it's an improv heavy game and a GM-less, but we do have a couple of rules.
Yeah.
And one is that you don't violate agency. So if you establish something that's true, unless the game mechanics change it, it stays true. So if you just decide that quicksand in our world is a building shrinking, I don't just undo that without consulting the dice. Sometimes things happen like you just forget, you know, it was night, now it's day. That rolls into the bad movie sort of thing. You don't decide if an approach makes sense, the dice do, that type of thing. And also, if I ever want to have your character in my scene, I got to get your permission.
Yeah.
You know, if like, let's have your character captured by the aliens and I rescue you. Well, maybe in your head, your character would never be captured.
Right.
So you have to say, oh, yeah, that'd be cool. And give me permission to play with your toys.
Exactly.
But if I was the first one to go. So what did we say our opening obstacle was?
Opening obstacle was a mystery to be solved.
Okay.
Right.
So, yeah. So we've already done some of that game plan as we created. So if I would be the one that goes first, it's just a open improv scene. I can say what I'm doing. I can interact with you or anybody else as long as I have your permission. And then at some point, I'm going to roll dice. And the idea that it works is like 80% of your turn is improv and role play and setup. And then I decide, okay, I'm going to try to roll my dice now. I roll my dice. And then if I roll really well, I then interpret how the scene moves. So I think it's like 80 to 85% roll, final 10, 15%, and then I would hand it off to you.
Okay.
So if I roll like terribly, maybe my gadget falls apart.
Right.
If I roll great, like I'm seeing blips and dots, and I'm like, wow, why is that a green dot? Why is that a blue dot?
Yeah.
But the act isn't over until you have cleared the obstacle. Obstacles have 12 points, because 12 is a great number. So whenever you roll a dice pool, every success counts against that. So our Solve the Mystery has 12, a value of 12.
Right.
If I roll a dice pool and I get 3 successes, we take it to a 9.
Okay.
It would be your turn. You would go, maybe it goes 3 more, we're at 6.
Okay.
I roll to get 3 more, we're at 3. You go again, you only get 2. So we just keep going back and forth.
Back and forth, okay.
So one of the keys to make the game really work is to find a way that you can like subdivide the obstacle so that it makes sense when you don't succeed right away.
Right.
So one of the examples we use is like if you're trying to fight a fire, if I say, okay, I'll go grab a fire extinguisher, I roll my dice and I get 3 successes, what does that mean in the fiction?
Right.
So a better would be like, I'm going to go look for a fire extinguisher. And I rolled 3, found a fire extinguisher. So obviously the fire is closer to be putting out because I found my fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
And maybe I roll terribly. And I'm like, the fire extinguisher is missing. Someone's taken it. That's why we're not closer to the fire being out. And we're building into the story of why wasn't it there?
Right.
And so then your step might be, well, I'm going to try to like open an airlock door to suck all the oxygen out. You get some successes, but you don't succeed. You get into position, but there was a fail safe. So you opened one set of doors, but not the second.
Yeah.
So you kind of make up your own mini obstacles. And that makes sense why you're moving slowly towards progression.
Oh, very cool.
But once you get the final result, then it's actually over and the act is over.
Absolutely.
So the last thing I would explain is the way the ones work. Anytime you roll a 1, you have to account for that in some way based on how you built your dice pool. So you always start with 1 die. I'm using my brains. That's my best. I roll 2, add 2 more. I'm going to use my gadgeteering. That's my 5 dice. I get good successes, but I still had a 1. I have to stress something that I used to build that. Maybe my gadgeteering skill. A stress skill can be used. A stress relationship can be used. But if it gets stressed again, it becomes broken. And it cannot be used again until you unstress it.
Okay.
And there's a healing mechanic happens between acts.
Right.
Or if someone just rolls really well. Or if you just make everybody laugh. If you drop that one-liner and the whole table laughs, everybody gets a free healing. Ones count as negative successes. Successes are ones. They count each other out. So if you roll a bunch of good numbers and a couple bad numbers, you still might have a net success. And all you're doing is you're tracking 12 down all the way. Nice. If you do end up with more setbacks, that's the official term, than successes, so you end up with a negative value, you add back to your obstacle. So again, you've made it worse. The fire is now spread. It's now in a different situation. The only time you wouldn't do that is if you would take it back above starting.
Oh, yeah.
So let's say we just started my very first roll. I do terribly. We would then add a second obstacle, but it only comes in with 6 value. So it's like that half one. So something has gone, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I did it, but things are now worse. So not only is it on fire, but also now there's an air leak. Oh, yeah. And so we have now a new obstacle we have to divide our attention between. And that's basically how the game works. We just go back and forth, improving, rolling dice. So the way the success works, 1s are bad. They're called setbacks. 2s through 7 are nothing. They're blanks. 8s, 9s, 10s, and 11s are successes. And 12s are 2 successes, but you can also do extra things with them because 12s are awesome. Oh, yeah. So you can just re-roll it right now. So that you could potentially actually get a 6th dice or even an 8th, depending on what you're doing. If it's another 12, another 2, re-roll it. If you get 2 or more 12s in one dice pool, you can give a free healing. Or you can do, my favorite thing is called the heroic high five, and I bank it. It's the only time I roll on your turn. And if I do that, I cannot fail. Like I will never roll a d12 on your turn to make your situation worse. But I can never roll more than 1 d12 on your turn. If we had 5 players, we could all bank them on like maybe the big final turn. We all roll our d12s. Each one is at minimum is a 1 success. And then you roll yours, and that's how we get our big. Big amazing. Final. So you can bank as many as you want, but you can never spend more than 1 at a time. Okay. I think that's all the most. I think that's all the bits.
Gosh, that sounds so cool. Okay.
There are a few examples of actual plays on the internet. We did a couple, so if people do want to listen to how it actually works. There's a couple streams, and there's one audio-only podcast. We link to it in the book. Tabletop Journeys is the one I did the actual play. I think they're all great. That's the one I would probably tell people to listen to. Absolutely. I like also the way they edited it. And okay. So I'm so glad I said that. Hold on. Because that play test created a new mechanic. And it's the needle drop.
Okay.
So if someone wants to change the result of their dice pool, one of the ways they can do it is say, oh, okay, this is the needle drop. This is the song that's playing over top of this action.
Oh.
And you can take a 1 and make it a nothing.
Okay.
If you actually sing the song, you can turn it to a success.
Oh.
So you can go from a -1 to a 0 or a -1 to a +1.
Mm-hmm.
And we were singing in that game so much. Like, that's
Oh,
kind of what
man.
inspired that. It's like, okay, if everybody's singing, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I want to reward that.
Mhm.
So the way it's written is every player can do it once, but ultimately what it means is for every player, it can be done once.
Mhm.
So like if one person's just, they're the singer, like, okay, what's my needle drop? Trevor,
Yep.
belt it out, and then I'm going to change this. If I'm not actually, because I'm a terrible singer.
Yeah.
But like, you don't actually have to sing the song. And like, if you wanted to go to YouTube and play it or something,
Mm-hmm.
but if you actually bring in an actual needle drop, you can change some dice pools.
Amazing.
Okay. I think
so
that's
cool.
all the cool stuff we
That's
need to cover.
very cool. So there is a lot of moving parts to this. What was the process like developing some of these mechanics in the form that they are right now?
Again, there was a lot of needlessly and unnecessarily complications early on that got cut out. But really, it's just the D12 dice pool.
Mm-hmm.
And you have like 3 or 4 different ways to manipulate the results after they've been rolled.
Mm-hmm.
But in actual play, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. What about for like just character creation itself? Like you've got a lot of like the world building stuff and
well, and the charts do most of that heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Again, just because I didn't physically have the stuff in front of me, we should have done all the world building before we did characters. Since we kind of did characters, world building characters, it probably seemed a little bit foggier than it should have. Because usually by the time you've done all your pre-production, you've created your NPCs, your world, your genre. There's some you can lean into the stereotypes of, okay, who fits this, and sometimes you can go against type, but if you're not sure, like there's probably a movie in your head that's similar to this or as an analog. I'm just going to play that version of that character. So if you want to do your own thing, you absolutely can. But if you have someone who maybe isn't as good at or comfortable with this, you can go, okay, I'm going to play this person in this movie.
Yeah.
It definitely helps a little bit. Again, like the Jason Statham was a good example. I'm Jason Statham in a bad movie. So I'm Jared Statham type of a thing.
Exactly.
That absolutely is the way the game can work and make it to kind of reduce some of that load on you. But it all started with me just trying to we were rolling like 10 and 12 D12s.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to see how many D12s I could get people to roll. And I have found through my playtesting that 5 is the right number.
Yeah.
5 D12s just is so satisfying. The math is heavily weighted in the player's favor because it's an action movie. You're not supposed to lose.
Exactly.
You're just supposed to have some trials and hardships along the way. And then the 12 also fits the theme and the title and the dice. But 12 is a good number because it's, because there's exploding dice. If you get 12s, you can re-roll them. Theoretically, you could roll one time and solve an act.
Yeah.
It has never happened once in playtesting. It could happen, but it's not likely. Generally speaking, you're going to get 2.5 to 3.5 successes every turn. So realistically, if you have 5 players, everyone's going to get to go at least once before you solve an act.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the numbers were. I didn't want anyone to not get to play.
That makes sense.
That's the whole thing.
Yep.
So that's kind of why it all sort of worked together, but it's very loose. I'm not a crunch kind of guy. So it's D12s, bigger numbers are better.
Yeah.
Actually, that does remind me the one other mechanic. If you happen to roll all blanks, whether you have the perfect number of successes and failures, so they cancel out, or you just happen to roll all 2s, since nothing really happened on your turn, you then get to do a villain cutscene where we show the audience what the bad guys are up to.
Nice.
And it could just be more world building about what's going on, or it could explain like why your actions didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Is they're actively fighting against you in some way that your character doesn't know, but the audience does.
Yeah.
So one of our tenets is that nothing never happens. Something always happens on everybody's turn, good
very
or
cool.
bad. You're never just like, well, I missed. Like I love D&D, but sometimes you're like, I missed in D&D. Okay, your turn. We don't have that in our game.
Awesome.
Okay.
Very cool. And then there's a ton of inspirations that you probably drew upon for the character creation and like the scenario creation in here.
Fate is a big one for me.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of Fate.
Yeah.
I've never had a lot of fun playing Fate. But reading that Fate core book absolutely changed the way I approach role-playing games.
Yeah.
It made me a better GM just reading it. And so that very much high concept, you can kind of create anything you want.
Yep.
A few skills, low numbers. create your own skills, what you want, the relationships. But it is very much a movie inspired. Fiasco is probably a really good touch point, which uses D6, so it's instantly inferior to the D12. And I think Fiasco is probably a more improv, like people who are really good at improv created that game. And again, Fiasco is amazing. I think my game fits my personal aesthetic better, not just because it's D12s. And I removed some of the fiddly bits that they did and instituted my own fiddly bits. But definitely Fiasco and Fate are probably two very big inspirations for the game.
Very cool. I like that.
Have you ever played in a more traditional D&D game where, like, when you kill a creature, the DM's like, oh, you get to describe, that's my entire game. I took that moment because you can describe it however you want. And as long as the dice say it worked, it works. So I took that moment and made a whole game out of it.
I love that. That's very cool. Well, I would be like, it would be a disservice not to ask you about the convention we're at.
We're here.
We're here. You have been running AcadeCon for a number of years. How long has AcadeCon been going on for?
So our numbering system is much like everything else I do. It's overly complex. So technically, this is our 11th year. But the first two were actually in the same year, and they were also just at my house. So AcadeCon started in my basement, just with my friends. It was just like an aggrandized gaming weekend with my friends. And then after the second one, after the first one, we had opened it up on the podcast and said, anybody who's listening, do you want to come play games with us? And people did. I had strangers I had never met, drove from out of state and hung out at my house for a weekend, which was really cool, but also a little bit weird. So we're like, maybe we shouldn't do this at my house. And the initial thought is that we would just rent out a small ballroom. Everybody throw in $20, $30, get a room, it's fine. I, along with Caleb, who was my co-host at the time, said, why don't we go to Kickstarter? That was kind of around the same time that was really starting to get big. We've seen other people. So we went to Kickstarter. We raised about $4,000. So we rented this lodge out in the middle of Houston Woods near where we live, which is a beautiful old building. It was an amazing time, but it was so small, there was no room for growth. So we're like, okay, well, this was, it was fun. We got to do this. It was amazing, but we want to see if we can get bigger. And so we found the Dayton Convention Center was really good for what we wanted. One, the price was right. Two, there wasn't another convention already in Dayton, at least not a 3-day. And there's 7 in Cincinnati, and there's Origins in Columbus, Gen Con's in Indianapolis. So it's kind of like we're really the only game in town. And the convention center is big enough that if we continue to grow, we can just get more and more space. And so this is our 8th year, but we skipped COVID year. So we didn't physically meet. We did an online thing. So realistically, this is our 8th year, but actually 7th, if that makes sense. But it's also our 11th if you count from the beginning. So we tell everyone this is our 11th, but it's either the 9th, 8th, or the 7th, depending on how you want to count them.
Somewhere in there.
It's somewhere in there, yes.
We just know it's not the 10th.
It's not the 10th, right.
Exactly. Amazing. And now we are 2023. We're at the end of the convention this year. How have things gone?
It's been a really good year for us. Our goal, just for people, our attendance goal was 600. We did not quite get there, but we beat last year. Because again, I don't know how many badges we've sold today. There's some mud in the water because our vendors, they get multiple badges, but we only put one in the system so that they want to run a game at their booth, they can let people know. But they have helpers, I don't put them in the badge. So there's a nebulous number of vendors that are here that aren't accounted for. But just people here to play games, we're a little over 500. We were hoping to get to 600. Said we're probably closer to 5 than 6, but we're somewhere in there. It's we're more focused on role playing games than board games, which is somewhat unusual for a con our size. Most of them are board game focused. We obviously have plenty of board games. We were really well supported with Play to Win games. We have a giant game library, but most of our scheduled events are role playing games. And the majority of them are not D&D or Pathfinder. I love D&D. 5th edition is one of my favorite games I've ever played. But I really like that our convention is a place where you can play things that you've never heard of before, or maybe aren't as well known. Savage Worlds, games like Action 12 Cinema. That it started at a previous AcadeCon. The first time I ran the ridiculously version was at an AcadeCon. I ran Dread here. I ran a Murder Mystery LARP, Savage Worlds, Cypher System. Not that these aren't unheard of, but they're not on that same tier as a WotC or Paizo. And about 80% of our RPGs were not D&D or Pathfinder.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, and it feels like that number of folks attending is getting close to what 2019 was the last time I was able to attend.
We're actually above that this year. We have that larger room. So the DCC is under construction.
Yes.
There was some weirdness with that day one. So we are further spread out. So it doesn't feel as full, but we are actually above 2019. So this will be our largest attendance ever.
Very cool.
And again, that's the growth we were hoping. It wasn't quite the growth I was hoping, but it's growth in the right direction.
Yeah.
We always do it the first or second weekend in November. Sometimes it changes based on how the calendar falls.
Yep.
I intentionally try to do it on the weekend of the time change because then you get an extra hour of sleep or gaming on Saturday night. It was very nice to get that extra hour. Next year, the time changes on the first weekend again, but it's like the first, second, and third. So it's like super early in November. Yeah. And there's some other conventions around here that sometimes are in October. So I got to wait to see where they fall. Yeah. And then I'll pick my spot, but it will probably be on the first weekend of November.
Very cool. Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. I'm so glad you were able to be here again.
I'm glad I was able to come here too. It was hit or miss, but my goodness, finally was able to make it. I hope next year Amelia is able to make it as well.
I would love to see her again.
It feels like I've been loving these interviews in person, and I think next year, if we're both able to attend, I would love to do more like designer interviews for our November series again, because this was a blast. I met some really cool people. One of our patrons and community members. We just covered that game in the last episode. Okay. And it's just been a blast.
I'm biased, of course. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. I helped create a con that is exactly the con I would want to attend. It's focused on RPGs. Board games are there because I love board games, but it's like these lesser known things. I get to try new stuff. We try to have a very friendly, casual atmosphere. This is much more like hanging out with your friends than a convention. Like we have rules and regulations, but it's all kind of loosey-goosey, and it's just like casual. So sort of our unofficial mantra or motto is gaming with friends, old and new. You're going to make friends here. Yeah. And one of the things that we do is we don't incentivize GMing like some of the larger cons do. One, we can't. We just can't afford it. If everyone who runs games gets a free badge, we wouldn't make any money. But most what that has meant, we lucked into it. It wasn't truly by design. But if someone's running a game at our con, I can almost guarantee you it's because it's their favorite game. They're not running it because they get the free badge. They're running it because I love this game and I want you to love it too. Yeah. So you get some really passionate, caring GMs or even just board game people who's like, this is my favorite board game. I want more people to play it. And I think it makes a difference. Yeah. I love Gen Con. I go to Gen Con every year. It's like my Christmas. But AcadeCon is special to me. Again, I'm biased. Yeah. But I really think we have some of the best GMs around because they're only running things that they love.
Exactly. They're not there for purely promoting stuff for the most part. And that's really cool to see. And this place has room for growth. If you triple in size,
I will die of anxiety attacks.
You'll have anxiety.
But my predecessor would be able to manage it in this building, yes.
But yeah, theoretically, this building could hold it.
Yes.
Which is really cool to see. There's plenty of spaces for panels. There's plenty of spaces for private rooms. I was able to take advantage of that this year with my Jenga-inspired game, which was a ton of fun.
And again, I did something. Dread's one of my favorite games in the world. Yeah. But it's different when you play Dread in a small boardroom with the lights down a little bit than if you're in a giant hall with other people.
It's so different. Yeah, I experienced that my first year in 2017. I think that was the year that I played a L5R Dread.
Okay.
And it just blew my mind. Like, and having that experience here, it just works. And it's so cool. Michael, thank you so much for joining us for this
absolute
episode.
Pleasure. I love talking about games. I'm a fan of yours, so this is an honor for me as well. I was absolutely thrilled to be here.
I'm really happy we were able to get you on the show. Action Toll Cinema sounds amazing.
Thank you.
I'm really going to check that out, and I want to play this game so bad. Like this,
it is so much scenario. Fun. It really is a lot of fun to play. Again, just because of who I am, if it wasn't fun, it wouldn't have happened. Like this was not a money thing for me. Kickstarter did well, but I'm still in the hole. It's just something I wanted to create. It was a lot of fun to do. And
we need Hollywood to get on board with RPGs and just play wild indie games like this for their stories. Yeah. And get filming.
It can't be worse than some of them.
It can't be worse than some of them, for sure. Well, could you remind everyone where they can find you online?
Yep. So I'm still most active on Twitter, but I'm honestly about to move away from it. I've moved to Blue Sky, so I have an account on Blue Sky for the RPG Academy. I have one for AcadeCon as well. If you just want to get like information, like you don't want to necessarily interact, Facebook is still the best. I have a page for AcadeCon and a page for RPG Academy. AcadeCon especially is pretty dormant. I don't post a lot in between, but like when we're announcing badge sales or stuff, that's a great place to be made aware of things. I love Twitter. Again, I have people in my life that I absolutely love and cherish as friends that I only know because of Twitter.
Yeah.
So it makes me very sad to see what has happened to it.
Sad.
And I don't know if Blue Sky is going to end up being the new Twitter, but it's the one that feels the most like what old Twitter felt like to me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm focusing there. But I'm still not very active anywhere, really.
Exactly. Yeah. It feels like social media has taken a weird turn lately, but we'll see where it ends. Yeah.
You can always, email me, the RPG Academy. We do still the podcast. We have some streams. And then AcadeCon are kind of the big things that I do.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for this special bonus episode live from the AcadeCon 2023 panel room 2 right now. And thank you so much. Don't forget to check out Action 12 Cinema on the RPG Academy website. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. And we'll see you next time, everybody. Call to action.
Yeah, like that.
I had a blast talking to Michael on the last day of AcadeCon. We were able to sit down together for a while, and thank goodness, Michael, you were able to pull yourself away from all of the busyness of wrapping up the convention to have a discussion with me. It was an absolute delight. This game is phenomenal. I believe what we came up with is amazing, and I can see myself having a ton of fun playing this with a bunch of friends and just going full ham on all of the like 80s action tropes. I would be super jazzed about playing this for the first time because we only made characters in this scenario, and I want this to be a movie so badly. Goodness gracious. But before we let you go for the day, here is our calls to action. First up, if you didn't hear us gush about it last time, Alex Roberts worked with some truly talented folks to bring an expansion to one of our favorite games, Starcrossed, called Love Letters. This expansion brings solo play, trio play, multi-table play, alternate endings, and so much more. You can also add on physical copies of I Have the High Ground by previous guest on the show, Jess Levine, including the deluxe version with tokens and special dice for the game. They even did a mashup of the two systems that is showcased over on Jeff Stormer's podcast, Party of One. If you want to hear how both of those games mash together seamlessly, we'll have links in the show notes to all of that, so definitely check it out. Next up, we recently released the mock-up of November's Sticker of the Month Club offering. We went back a couple years to our Hallmark-style game of A Christmas Belonging with guest Danny Dillinger. We took some inspiration from the Honey Festival of Lake Gulpin and made something to commemorate the magical Honey Kiss occasion, which leads perfectly into next month's series, but now we're getting ahead of ourselves. You can get this sticker and our entire release of stickers since the beginning if you sign up for a $10 level on Patreon at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. The older stickers are first come, first serve, but we do have plenty left over. Along with this, you'll get a set of custom C3D6s from Chessex, a personal thank you card made by Amelia herself, our bonus feed, which is soon going to have the AcadeCon panel that I ran with folks at the convention, and much more. Even the $1 level gets you bonus chit-chats every week as we are able to record them, and Patreon shoutouts and thank yous in every episode, just like we're about to do right here, right now, starting with Lieutenant and DJG, aka Tigranosaurus. You're the best. Thank you. Eric Bonts and Daryl Holiday II, thank you so much. We appreciate your support as well. Shadim Kabbalah and the Shyest Barbarian, thank you. Benjamin Sweeney and Lorcan McGinnis, many thanks to you. Rob Fletcher and Kevin Brown, you're the best. Thank you. Tentacle Duck and Cole McCallum, thank you so much. John Adamus and the nightly narrative of Nick snaking nannies who are never going to give you up, never going to let you down, never going to run. Okay. Thanks for believing in us. Many thanks to Carlos Salazar and Eric S. We appreciate your support, Ross Kinston and Ned Pontmeyer. Thank you. Sorry Goth and Liam G. You rock. Thank you. We appreciate your support as well, Brian Colm and Garden GM. Thank you. Dark Mirror and Tom, many thanks to you. Blue Kryptonite and Danny, thanks for helping us make this show. Nicole Trainer and Liam Murray, you rock. Thank you so much. And Kenning and Brian Kurtz, thank you for your continued support. And thank you to all of our future patrons and supporters. You are contributing to a wonderful community in the TTRPG space, but also helping us afford to make this show and do cool things like interview designers in person at conventions. We are so appreciative of all that you make possible with your contributions and support. If you're already supporting the show financially, or if you are unable to do so at this time, consider leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, or even Facebook. They even do ratings on Spotify if you're using the mobile app. Every 5-star review we get, we'll read out right here and thank you personally. Unfortunately, we are still out of reviews, and Amelia's birthday was just last week, so if you are wanting to make the holiday season extra special for both of us at this point, consider leaving a review. We both would appreciate it immensely because it makes us feel all warm inside every time we read them, and it's pretty much winter here in Wisconsin right now, so we need all the warmth that we can get. That's all for this series and for November's episodes. We will be back next week with the start of a whole new series already. We've got Taylor Curry-Smith joining us from Whimsy Machine Media to learn about his holiday game jam game, The Santa Corps. You won't want to miss this series. Until then, take care, everyone. Stay safe, drink some water, maybe stay cozy on some hot chocolate, and maybe a warm blanket, depending on where you're at in the world. And keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time. Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at CreationCast, or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, exclusive merch, and much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.